Navigating the dynamics of the Korean Peninsula requires more than just information, it demands insight. Korea Risk Group offers strategic consulting that cuts through the noise. Our experts provide in-depth analysis, risk assessments, and bespoke reports, all tailored to your specific needs. Whether you're exploring new opportunities or managing existing challenges, our insights can be your compass. To learn more about how we can help you make informed, strategic decisions, visit korearisk.com/solutions today. Hello listeners and welcome to the NK News Podcast. I'm your host, Jacco Zwetsloot, and today it is Monday, the 2nd of February 2026, and I'm joined here in the studio by Shreyas Reddy. Shreyas, welcome.
Thank you for having me, Jacco.
So we are here, it's the start of February, we still haven't had that pesky Congress yet, the 5-yearly Congress. That's coming up soon, but we're going to start off with some things that are happening in the lead up to the Congress, because of course that's generally a review of the last 5-year plan and where the presentation of the next 5-year plan. And part of the previous 5-year plan has been this big project, the 20 by 10 project. What is it, or what has it been?
Yes, so the 2010 project wasn't actually something that started directly at the last Congress. It started a couple of years ago where Kim Jong-un essentially unveiled this flagship initiative to create essentially 200 new factories and industrial units across the country over the course of a decade.
20 each year over 10 years equals 200.
Yes.
That's the 20 by 10.
And so the idea was basically about developing the regional economy across North Korea rather than it just being restricted to a select few sites where they already had development for years. At least that was the goal.
Right.
It was obviously down to the broader economic plan that was laid out at the last Congress. But at the time, initially, the emphasis was on Pyongyang and housing projects nationwide.
Right.
And
that creates has created a very lopsided, Pyongyang is one country and the rest of North Korea is another.
Yes.
And this is kind of, in a way, an attempt to redress that imbalance, right?
Or at least that was the purpose. And in the first year, we definitely saw at least signs of North Korea trying to develop projects in other areas. But then some of those projects seem to have run over. And last year, North Korea went for what appeared to be a different tactic, which was essentially pick towns and regions where there already were existing military bases or factories or even other projects that had already begun. And essentially what that means is those areas already have some resources in play that you can use to develop new projects. And now North Korea has effectively begun the third year of its project, of this 2010 initiative, with a series of new projects that seem to be following essentially the same lines. Instead of
pick a spot where something's already happening and then build something bigger, and then kind of grandfather the existing projects into this new project.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so Kim Jong-un and North Korea seem to have begun construction in at least 7 towns across the country last week. So kicking off the third year of the project. But quite prominently, many of these were, again, where there are existing military facilities and other resources already in place.
I like the article that our colleague Colin wrote mentions about the leisure complexes that each of these 20 by 10 towns will have. And it says each leisure complex appears to house a library, a few shops, a supermarket, an outdoor flea market, interesting, a small gym with a few machines, a hair salon, a 1 or 2 room theatre, and other basic amenities. So it's a lot more than just, sort of housing and industrial stuff.
Yes, I mean, it is essentially going to be an all-round complex that caters to many different needs of the local workers as well as others in the region.
Now, has Kim recently been to inspect some of these?
So these ones have just begun. So the focus was more on inaugurating the projects, at least rather just over the weekend. They reported, or rather, actually, today it was reported that Kim Jong-un has officially opened the country's largest greenhouse farm,
Oh.
which is at Siniju on the border with China.
Oh, that is big.
This is a project that has been in the works for a while,
Mhm.
and it's not just the biggest in North Korea by far, it's a larger footprint than all its previous mega greenhouses, but one of the largest in the world.
Good God. Okay, that's interesting. Can't wait to see some photographs of that one.
Yeah.
I see also in the article that Colin wrote that it was reported last Friday, so sometime last week, Kim Jong-un attended a groundbreaking ceremony for new factories in, I think it's Eunryul County, if I'm not mistaken, southwest of the capital. So he is doing a lot of traveling around, visiting these sites where projects are going on, and either inaugurating them as they're beginning or inspecting them at the end of their construction process.
Yes, and this is something that they really want to wrap up before the Congress, or at least get the new projects going and make sure all the previous ones are wrapped up, which at the moment they seem to be headed toward that before they really gear up for the party Congress. But of course, there are also some other things that they need to do before the Congress begins. And so they've got the ball rolling on the official formalities. So, for example, last week, the Central Committee of the ruling Workers' Party held a conference in which it elected delegates and observers to attend the 9th Party Congress. And something else that they need to do is essentially elect provincial party representatives, which will then perhaps eventually lead to state media publishing or announcing an official schedule for the 9th Party Congress. Now, they may not give specific dates, but at least it'll give us a sense of when it'll happen.
And it will be interesting to see if there are any foreign media around the Congress or even in the conference. I imagine if there were, it would be exclusively Russian, perhaps some Chinese, maybe a Cuban journalist, something like that.
Yeah, it's an interesting question because I think a lot of people remember in 2016, at least in our field, remember in 2016 when international journalists got to attend the Congress.
Including folks from NK News.
Yes, but the fact is, it's also hard to really set a precedent because the last party Congress was in 2021 during the pandemic.
Yes.
No outsiders could come in. The 2016 Congress featured journalists, but it didn't feature party delegations from other countries.
Yeah.
And essentially, the 2016 one was the first party Congress in 36 years.
Yeah. And also, if I'm not mistaken, foreign journalists were taken to a site in the city and sort of pointed out a building across the road and said, "There's the Congress. That's as close as you're getting." I don't think they actually got into the room.
Yeah, I think that would be a bit of a stretch. But I think when we're drawing points of comparison, one is this has only happened once in, forget just Kim Jong-un's reign, even Kim Jong-il, during his time, there were no party congresses.
Right.
So the fact is we only have one case in the last few decades to go on to say there were journalists. And right now, North Korea is nowhere near that open. Then they haven't allowed foreign journalists in for other events. Maybe they'll allow Russian, perhaps some Chinese journalists. There are some outlets on the ground where they already got staff.
Yep.
At the moment, it doesn't seem likely that they're going to allow anyone in.
We will see. All right, next story. North Korea has welcomed a new ambassador to Pyongyang.
Indeed. A new Iranian ambassador has assumed his post last week. He officially presented his credentials to Choi Ryong-hae, the head of North Korea's parliament. And so the new ambassador, Abbas Talebifar, he comes with some history in dealing with East Asia matters. He was previously director of the Iranian Foreign Ministry's Second East Asia and Oceania Department. And he's also served as ambassador to Brunei and Georgia. I believe at one point, many, many years ago, he also researched China, or at least seems to have some publications related to that. So he's certainly well-versed in the region.
Okay, but no evidence of his ever having worked at the Iranian embassy here in Seoul.
No, that does not appear to be the case. But still, it is a significant appointment because the last time Iran had a resident ambassador in Pyongyang was in 2020, when the previous ambassador left during the pandemic amid a broader exodus of diplomats.
Right. So Iran was one of those embassies that didn't have a full staff, let alone an ambassador, for 5 years, basically, from late 2020 until very early this year. So this is a big comeback. As I hinted at before, Iran maintains embassies in both Korean capitals, both in Seoul and in Pyongyang. It's certainly an interesting time for Iran to be sending an ambassador to North Korea, given the social upheaval that's going on in Iran right now.
Definitely. I mean, lots going on for the Iranian government to deal with. Admittedly, this appointment originally took place a few months ago.
Right.
So when perhaps that turmoil was just beginning to swell. That said, the questions again about why now? Why is Iran doing this after such a long gap?
Yeah.
The best answer we can really find is it's honestly something that would have been on the cards for a while. It would have happened sooner or later.
Yeah.
And these two countries have had relations for a while, even if in recent months they no longer seem to be among each other's top priorities. Both countries are currently more focused on their own domestic matters. Iran perhaps understandably also concerned about US interests in the region. But they're also both cooperating closely with Russia.
Russia in its war on Ukraine, yes. Iran with drones and North Korea with other artillery and men, yeah. Now, speaking on that note, I saw in the story, this article, which you wrote, has a photograph of the new ambassador, Abbas Talebifar, next to what appears to be a man in a military uniform. Could he be the new Iranian defense attaché to Pyongyang?
Quite likely. I mean, so Iran has sent military attachés to Pyongyang in the past, and they've been quite active. Some of them have even risen to become senior ministers in Iran's government in the past. So it is an important post as far as Iran is concerned and highlights the close relations between the two countries. We don't know anything really about the military attaché at this point, if that is indeed his role.
But yeah, I can imagine that they wouldn't be sending a man in a military uniform if he's just there to be twiddling his thumbs. I imagine he would be doing some liaising with the North Korean military and talking about what they can do together.
Of course, another possibility is he may also just be the translator, but he certainly was wearing a uniform, so...
Yes, time will tell. All right, for our last story, we've got a couple of minutes. Let's talk about a review of the state media for last week that our colleague Sung-Yeon Jung wrote for us. North Korea accelerates party Congress prep as January draws to a close. We've talked a little bit about the Congress already, so and there's a lot of stuff in the review here, but I want to bring up something interesting from a cultural perspective. The Moranbong Band, which used to be a big thing in Korea in the early days of Kim Jong-un, and was formerly headed up by Hyun Song-wol, who was a close friend confidant of Kim Jong-un, has some role in the government. I understand that Moranbong Band is really disappearing from the page of history.
Yeah, it's an interesting mission. We've been watching for a few years now, and I think many people were surprised how quickly it just faded out of prominence. And in some ways, it has been a curious change because North Korea used to promote the Moranbong Band very actively. But perhaps one explanation is simply North Korea's changing approach to both outside and inside and domestic culture. When it comes down to it, the Moranbong Band had often been promoted as North Korea's version of a K-pop group, of a K-pop girl group. And it was very evident in their stylings, the way they performed. It had perhaps more outside influences. It was a more Western-style pop group than many of many of North Korea's other acts.
Like the Bochonbo Electronic Ensemble.
And so perhaps, as we've seen in the last few years, North Korea has sought to crack down on all external culture and anything that even seems to bear inspiration from South Korean pop or Western culture. And it seems that quite likely Moranbong Band might have just fallen victim to that purge.
Okay. So not for ideological reasons, just styles change, trends change?
I mean, I think it might be a bit of both. It is, when we're talking about this emphasis on keeping outside culture out, it is about, a lot of it has been about what the state sees as influences that corrupt North Korea's youth and take them away from North Korea's socialist values. So this is also about entrenching North Korea's way of operations, what the North Korean state says, even though Moranbong Band was very much the state's own propaganda tool at one point.
And lastly, I saw that the The KCNA reported that the Indian embassy in Pyongyang held a reception at the Tehran Diplomatic Club last week on Monday, the 26th of January, to commemorate its Republic Day, at which there were North Korean foreign ministry officials and members of the diplomatic corps in attendance. Wouldn't you love to be a fly on the wall at an event like that?
Oh, well, it would certainly be interesting. I mean, I think I was at the corresponding event in Seoul, but yeah, it would be certainly interesting to compare just how different the two events are.
No doubt, yeah. All right, well, thank you, Shreyas Reddy, for coming on the NK News podcast this week.
Thank you.
Explore the unofficial world of DPRK-inspired apparel at NK News Shop. Dive into a captivating collection of North Korea-themed T-shirts, hoodies, and more at the NK News Shop. From the popular Daedonggang beer T-shirts to the adventurous Air Koryo designs, each piece offers a unique glimpse into aspects of the DPRK you'll be familiar with. Featuring retro travel-inspired prints of Pyongyang's landmarks and brands, our apparel is 100% handcrafted in the USA. Support independent journalism with every purchase. Explore our range today at shop.nknews.org. That's shop.nknews.org. Ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of our podcast episode for today. Our thanks go to Brian Betts and David Choi for facilitating this episode, and to our post-recording producer, Alana Hill, who cuts out all the extraneous noises, awkward silences, bodily functions, and fixes the audio levels. Thank you for listening, and listen again next time.